Today we're going to ride the Hiawatha train trestle route, which is now, well, it's abandoned now. It used to be an old train route with a bunch of different tunnels and trestles. Now it is a bike route, and it's gotten popularized over the last handful of years and now is quite a thing. Now, if you want to come here, you can do a few different ways. One is to park at the bottom like we did, and you buy a pass just to ride on the trail. And we rode up from the bottom to the top and then back down to the bottom, which was over 30 miles, quite lengthy. It took us around 3 hours to ride up, with stopping at every little informational board and reading it, and just about an hour to come back down, about a 4-hour total trek. Now, if you want to get any of the tickets, what are the ticket costs information?
It costs $15 a person to ride the trail. If you want a shuttle, meaning that you park at the top and you ride down, which is just 15 miles, that's an extra $15 if you bring your own bikes. If you rent bikes, I think it's $37 a bike, and then $15 for your shuttle ride and $15 for your trail pass.
Yep, so depending on how you want to do it, if you have your own bike, it'll save some money. If you want to only ride down and get a shuttle up, that is another option. Or if you want the full meal deal of suffering and pain, you do what we did. And pretty fun route. We're going to show you guys this video uncut, top to bottom. You can see the whole thing. Stay tuned, stick it out to the end. It's a fun route. Let's get going. All right, let's do this thing. Tunnel number 1. It is very dark. Tunnel 20. It is 8,771 feet in length, just under 9,000 feet. And it is quite dark in here. Thankfully, Faith has a light. Since you have a light, I will follow you. I don't know that I can see anything. Maybe I'll ride close to you. In the late 1800s, the Milwaukee Road was a prosperous railroad out of Chicago that had over 6,000 miles of track in the upper Midwest. Experiencing competition from other rail lines, the company decided to expand west to take advantage of the expanding West Coast markets as well as the Pacific Rim trade. The route proposed for the new line was through the rugged Bitterroot Mountains. Prior to preparing official plans for construction, significant exploration had to be undertaken to select the most feasible route. Various possibilities existed westward of Butte and up beyond Missoula. The exploration and reconnaissance crews reported covering over 2,000 miles, crossing the territory of many tribal nations along the way in a country that was wild with very few trails and virtually no maps. The exploration work on the Montana side began in November 1904. The exploration on the Idaho side began in May of 1905. In November 1905, the Milwaukee Road Board of Directors formally approved the line's extension to Seattle-Tacoma, Washington. Because time was an enormous factor, the crews worked year-round and did not stop because of winter weather. By the spring of 1906, the choices were narrowing to the St. Paul Pass and St. Joe River Valley. After exploration surveys during most of 1906, engineering survey crews finally helped select and identify the actual location of where the tracks would be located. By early 1907, the construction work began. The actual construction of the rail bed and the track was very difficult due to the forbidding terrain and the weather conditions. The cost of the project, which was originally estimated at $45 million, ended up exceeding $234 million, plus another $23 million to convert to electric locomotives in 1910 to 1911. All in all, it took nearly 9,000 men working together from 1906 to 1911 to construct this Pacific extension. Intercontinental freight service on the new line began on July 4th, 1909, with passenger service following 6 days thereafter. The St. Paul Pass Tunnel. The Milwaukee Road faced the daunting task of drilling a tunnel that was 23 foot high, 16 foot wide, and 1.7 miles long into Idaho. It was a dark, damp, dingy dig after the approachers were prepared in 1906 and a faltering start to 1907, work began in earnest in 1908. East and west crews toiled around the clock in wet, miserable conditions, and at their best, tunnel 20 foot a day. A company official remembered that men were hard to keep as the work was disagreeable and hard. Several large veins of water were encountered, and at times the work conditions were almost unbearable. It took 750 men, 400 tunneling inside, 200 outside, removing the dirt and rock, and 150 running the dig's power plant yards, 2.5 years to complete. The steam-driven electric power plant, set up 4 miles away in Taft, Montana, powered both ends of the dig. Compressed air provided safe, smokeless power to the giant steam shovels that loaded the blasted, broken rock into the electric rail cars for removal. In August of 1910, one of the most devastating forest fires in recorded American history burned much of the natural forests in northern Idaho and western Montana. The fire burned 2.5 to 3 million acres. It was so huge that a massive cloud of smoke spread throughout southern Canada and the northern United States all the way to St. Lawrence waterway. The darkness from the smoke was so bad that for 5 days artificial lighting had to be used from Butte, Montana, including Chicago, to Watertown, New York. The fire completely devastated the St. Joe River Valley and destroyed all the towns except Avery and Marble Creek. Many of these were never rebuilt. There were numerous stories of very heroic actions by railroad employees who drove engines and boxcars filled with people through the flames to safety of the longer tunnels. Reportedly, over 600 lives were saved in this manner alone. After this disastrous fire, as well as for some other operating reasons, the Milwaukee Road made the decision to electrify the line. The use of electric locomotives between Avery and Hiawatha, Montana, a distance of 440 miles. This innovation by the railroad was the first use of electrification over an extended distance and was watched very closely by other railroaders. The results were astounding, both in terms of reliability of operations as well as profitability. Numerous settlements sprouted throughout the area. Avery was the division point on the line and became one of the more substantial settlements. Others were very rough constructed camps with evenings full of riotous gambling, drinking, dancing, and fighting.
It's getting dark in here. I'm taking out my sunglasses. Not enough. Oh yeah, there's the light.
These were the glory days of the railroad, which was then called the Chicago, Milwaukee, and Puget Sound, later to be called Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul, and Pacific. Still, despite its accomplishments, the railroad had more than its share of hardships. It was forced into receivership in 1925. It was reorganized 18 months later in the years between 1921 and 1940. it only had 3 years in the black. The railroad declared another bankruptcy in 1935. The advent of the speedy 100-mile-per-hour Hiawatha train in the Midwest and Olympian Hiawatha from Chicago to Seattle returned some degree of prosperity to the line following World War II. But even that was short-lived, and gradually, through the various reductions of services, this once proud railroad gradually deteriorated. The last passenger train, the Olympian Hiawatha, passed through the Bitterroots in 1961, and the electric locomotives were gradually replaced by diesel engines by 1973. The final bankruptcy was filed in 1977.
All right, let's do it.
And the last train west of Butte passed through in 1980. After that, the line was abandoned. There were 22 substations constructed along the Milwaukee Road electrified portion of the main line from Hiawatha, Montana to Tacoma, Washington. The substation housed 3 transformers and 3 powerful generators, which converted 100,000 volts of alternating current from the Thompson Falls Dam into 3,000 volts of direct current.
There's tunnel 23, 279 feet in length, but it was closed down because of seismic activity, i.e. it's falling down. So this is around the tunnel detour. Wow, look at that. Excellent view. Oh man. You get some speed going now. There's the entrance to the tunnel. Whew. Nice. This is tunnel 24. It is 377 feet in length and not nearly as dark.
The Chicago Tribune in 1909 named Taft the wickedest city in America. This den of iniquity sprouted up between 1907 and 1909. The town consisted of 27 saloons, 2 theaters, dance halls, saloons, a butcher shop, a general store, a drugstore, a hospital, and a hotel. The railroad construction facilities scattered along the south side of the tracks included a material yard, shops, offices, barns, warehouses, and a powerhouse, and it was soon a place of about 1,000 inhabitants. This town survived near riots, panics, floods, a fire in 1908 that destroyed half the businesses, and the Great 1910 fire, which burned everything down. Murder was common in Taft. Every spring, half a dozen bodies melted out of the snow behind the bars and brothels.
This is Barnes Creek Trestle. It is another tall trestle. It is definitely falling down, but no problem. This trestle is 117 foot in height and over 500 foot in length. Hello. Come on up. Come on. You got this. Come on. This is the Kelly Creek Trestle. You can see down there is the other trestle. That's crazy. That's where we're headed. This trestle is 230 foot and 560 foot in length.
Bitterroot winters are frigid and long-lasting, with the snow staying on the ridges and packed into the draws and gullies well into the spring. Roland and East Portal can receive up to a foot of snow an hour during a big storm. The snowpack can be 12 or 15 foot deep at winter's peak. Milwaukee's electric engines were unaffected by the cold as long as the tracks were clear of snow. The Milwaukee Railroad used powerful rotary snow plows to chew a path through the massive snow slides and drifts.
Tunnel! This is tunnel 25, 966 foot in length.
Snaking the railroad down the western side of the Bitterroot Mountains, the Milwaukee Road burrowed 16 tunnels to maintain a uniform grade down to Avery. These tunnels were largely dug by hand using sledgehammers and hand drills. In some cases, steam-powered drills and steam donkey engines were hauled to work site to speed up the digging. It took 3 years and the toil of hundreds of men before the massive job was complete. The railroad built numerous sturdy but short-lived wooden trestles to prepare the new line for track as soon as possible. Over the Bitterroot Mountains alone, the railroad constructed 29 of these temporary trestles with a combined length of over 10,000 feet.
It's a tunnel. Tunnel number 26. It is 683 foot in length and extra wide for fat kids. Man, 600 feet feels very short in comparison. You can see the end of it, no problem. That's pretty good. No waterfall. It's pretty legit. All right, babe, let's step on it. Ready, go. Speed. More speed.
Fire danger prompted the railroad to immediately begin replacing the wooden trestles. The Milwaukee used a relatively new steel design deck girder bridges with solid concrete floors. Our large I-beams on top of the steel towers supported U-shaped concrete tubs. These held a layer of rock and ballast on which the ties and rails sat.
This trestle is Turkey Creek Trestle. Ooh, very scenic and nice, quite tall. Turkey Creek, it's not very tall. Not very tall, it's very tall. And another trestle. Russell Creek Trestle. We used to be way up there. Now we're down here. It's one of the shorter trestles. Only 281 foot in length, 96 foot in height. This is Bear Creek Trestle. There's our road way up there. This is 155 foot in height, over 500 foot in length. Cedar Creek Trestle. Tunnel 27, 470 foots. That's a lot of foots. Woo! Woo! Coming through the tunnel. Coming through. It's a nice short tunnel. We have tunnel 28, 178 feet in length, and a lot of wind. Oh, man. Ah!
An astonishing contraption called the Traveler, a giant rolling crane, erected the Kelly and Clear Creek trestles in record time. Milwaukee decided to build the Kelly and Creek trestles out of steel right from the beginning. Horse and mule teams had already hauled in concrete for the foundations of the two bridges during the early construction period in 1908. Prefabricated steel bridge pieces shipped from eastern United States arrived just as the railroad tracks were laid up to the site. Then the Traveler was delivered unassembled by work train to the bridge site. It took 9 days to put the 150-ton, 120-foot-long behemoth together and get it working. On June 29, 1947, the pride of the Milwaukee Road was introduced, an all-new streamlined train called the Olympian Hiawatha. The name Hiawatha originated from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's poem Song of the Hiawatha, written in the mid-1800s. This luxurious and futuristic train was styled by noted industrial designer Brooks Stevens. It consisted of a sweeping cab-style diesel locomotive followed by a mail car, baggage dormitory car, 3 coaches, a dining car, a tap lounge grill, Tura Lux sleeping car, roomette car, and skytop lounge car. The most distinctive part was the skytop lounge. The rear 20 feet of these cars consisted of a rounded solarium of glass offered an unparalleled view. In 1952, the lounge cars were replaced with super dome cars. These were 2-story cars with 68 seats in an upper glass domed section and 28 seats in the beverage lounge underneath. High steel trestles, long curved tunnels, and steep rocky embankments could be accidents waiting to happen. Occasionally, destructive wrecks did occur. 2 steam engine locomotives collided head-on in 1910. In 1919, Motor Creek got its name when a box cab electric engine derailed beside it. In 1933, the Columbian passenger train derailed and fell into the North Fork of St. Joe River just above Avery. Derailments became distressingly commonplace among the whole system during the 1970s as the dying company put less and less money into its maintenance. In 1925, the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railway Company suffered the largest business failure in history of the United States up to that time. The bankruptcy resulted from the combination of problems related to its construction of the western extension. More costs were incurred during World War I when the government temporarily seized the company. Additionally, the anticipated traffic over the new line never materialized due to the opening of the Panama Canal in 1914. The increased use of automobiles and trucks, stiff competition from the Northern Pacific and Great Northern Railroad, and the general economic downturn in the Northwest after the First World War.
Tunnel 29! 217 feet!
Reorganized in 1927 as the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul, and Pacific, the company worked to overcome its problems but slipped back into bankruptcy in 1935. It stayed in receivership until 1945, when it again was reorganized. The company then looked as if it had a promising future, but diminished traffic, management mistakes, and competition finally drove it into bankruptcy for the final time in 1977. The last remnants of the line were sold in 1985.
All right, throw your hands up in victory. Yeah. All right, we've completed the trail. What do you think?
I thought it was a beautiful trail and definitely worth doing at least once. I don't know.
Once is good.
I don't know that I'd really want to do it again just because
It was interesting. About 30 miles and yeah, fairly scenic. It was kind of just an interesting experience.
Yeah.
And
I think it was beautiful, but
I think it would have been more fun before it got popularized
Yeah.
and it was more rustic.
it's pretty much a road.
Feels a bit touristy, but it's still kind of a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
If you're in the area, you can check it out. Thanks for watching.
Have a good day.